Karen called 911 when I returned early from my trip because she was renting out my cabin online. Some people borrow sugar from their neighbors. Others borrow your peace of mind, your sanity, and in my case, your entire lakeside cabin. Let's rewind a bit. After months of brutal hours at the office, dealing with budget cuts and micromanaging bosses who thought weekends were just a myth, I finally planned my great escape. A week off the grid. I booked myself a fly fishing retreat upstate and left my prized possession, a quiet, charming cabin by the lake, in the care of silence and locked doors. Or so I thought. The flight cancellation hit me like a bad joke. After 6 months of planning, weather patterns conspired against me, leaving me stranded at the airport with nothing but a duffel bag of fishing gear and a heavy dose of disappointment. All flights to Riverside County are canceled due to severe thunderstorms, the airline representative announced with practiced sympathy. We can rebook you for next Tuesday. Tuesday, for days away. My entire retreat, dissolving like aspirin in water. After a torturous 5-hour drive back to the lake, fueled by gas station coffee and a playlist of songs that now felt mockingly upbeat, I finally turned into the familiar gravel drive of my property. That's when exhaustion gave way to confusion. My cabin was lit up like a wedding venue. String lights dangled from a porch. A flaming tiki torch stood guard. Through the window, I could see strangers sipping cocktails on my couch. My antique coffee table, a family heirloom passed down from my grandfather, now served as a makeshift bar with bottles of wine and mixers lined up like soldiers. I blinked twice. I wasn't dreaming. A burst of laughter floated through the open windows. Someone had replaced my simple linen curtains with what appeared to be flowing bohemian tapestries. The wooden sign that read, Thornhill Cabin, EST 1967, was covered by a chalkboard that cheerfully announced, Welcome to Lakeside Haven. Tag us on Instagram. Hashtag Karen's Getaways. My stomach twisted into a knot. I knew exactly who Karen was. I parked, stepped out of the car slowly, like I was in a hostage negotiation with reality, and walked toward my own front door. Before I even knocked, the door swung open. And there she was. Karen. Huawei Ali. Walking, talking, bylaws on speed dial Karen. Oh, you're back early, she chirped, holding a tray of canapes like this was her event. She wore an apron that said, Lake Life, Host Extraordinaire, over a floral sundress. Behind her, I could see my living room had been transformed. Throw pillows with nautical themes covered my leather sofa. A banner hung across my stone fireplace reading, Lake Memories Happen Here. And everywhere, were people I'd never seen before. I asked, why are there people in my house? Karen, well, I figured since you were away, it was such a waste to leave the place empty. So I listed it on a few vacation sites. Just 4 Astor's community guests, of course. I said, what? Karen, waving it off like I was the one overreacting. It's actually very common in shared lake communities. It's called passive income. You should thank me. Me? Thank you? For breaking into my home and turning it into a hotel. Karen lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. I didn't break in. I used the spare key. The spare key. The one I kept hidden under the fake rock by the garden shed. For emergencies. Karen continued. Besides, the HOA bylaws encourage resource sharing. It's all about community efficiency. A man in his 40s wearing a Hawaiian shirt approached us. Hey Karen, is this the maintenance guy you mentioned? The hot tub jets aren't working right. Hot tub? My hot tub? Karen smiled sweetly. Oh no, this is just a neighbor. He was just leaving. Reader, I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked past her into my living room, now redecorated with lavender candles. Throw pillows that read Live, Laugh, Lake, and the overwhelming scent of eucalyptus essential oil. Guests were everywhere. One guy in flip-flops nodded at me like I was the doorman. Hey, can we get some more towels? A woman sat at my desk, where a laminated sheet titled Local Attractions had been taped down. Next to it was a ledger. I grabbed it before Karen could intervene. Hey, she protested, lunging for the book. I flipped it open. Page after page of bookings. Dates. Names. Payment amounts. This wasn't a one-time thing. Karen had been renting out my cabin for months. How long has this been going on? I demanded. Karen straightened her apron. Well, I notice you only come up here every other weekend. That's 26 weekends a year of vacancy. Do you know what kind of demand there is for lakefront properties? I'm charging $445 a night. That's premium efficiency. A couple by the window exchanged uncomfortable glances. Karen, the woman said, you told us the owner was your cousin who asked you to manage the property. Karen laughed nervously. Figure of speech. We're all like family around the lake. I turned to Karen and said flatly, everyone, out. Now, her eyes narrowed. You're not being very neighborly. I raised my voice, addressing the room. I'm the owner of this cabin. I did not authorize any rentals. This woman has illegally entered my property and has been operating an unauthorized business. You have 30 minutes to collect your belongings. Chaos erupted. A family with 2 teenagers started arguing about refunds. A couple frantically gathered wine bottles they'd brought. Someone asked if they still had to pay the cleaning fee. Karen's face flushed crimson. You're ruining everything, she hissed. Do you know how long it took me to get 5-star host status? I have 14 bookings lined up for the summer. I walked outside, grabbed my phone to call the sheriff, and that's when it happened. She called 911 on me for trespassing. No, seriously. 911, what's your emergency? I could hear the dispatcher's voice from where I stood. This man is harassing guests in a rental I'm managing. I believe he's trying to intimidate them, she told dispatch, while I stood holding my cabin key like some kind of cursed relic. He's aggressive and making everyone uncomfortable. He claims he owns the property. Ma'am, does he own the property? The dispatcher asked. That's not relevant right now, Karen snapped. What's relevant is that I have paying guests who are being threatened. I stepped closer. My name is Daniel Thornhill. I own this cabin. This woman has been illegally renting out my property without permission while I was away. Karen covered the phone. You're making a scene. These people saved up for this vacation. Think about them. As if on cue, a guest emerged from my bedroom, wearing my bathrobe. Is everything okay out here? I nearly choked. Is that my complimentary spa robes? Karen interjected quickly. Part of the premium experience. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone. Ma'am, we're sending officers to your location. Please remain calm and avoid confrontation. Karen hung up and smiled triumphantly. The authorities will sort this out. While waiting for the police, I ventured deeper into my own home. In the kitchen, my grandmother's cast iron skillet, seasoned over decades, sat crusted with burned cheese. My fishing trophies had been stashed in a closet, replaced with generic lake house vibes artwork. And in my bedroom, someone had been sleeping in my bed. The sheets were different, floral patterns I would never choose. My clothes had been moved to a storage bin labeled owner's items, do not touch. I'd been erased from my own home. When the deputies arrived, I greeted them with paperwork. The deed, photo ID, security footage of me locking the place before I left, and a screenshot of the Airbnb listing titled, Rustic Lake Getaway, managed by Karen. $445 per night. My home. Karen tried the usual gaslighting nonsense. He said I could. This is a community effort. We have an understanding. Check the HOA bylaws about resource optimization. I was just being a good neighbor. One of the officers looked up and said, Ma'am, he's the registered owner. There's no lease, no agreement, and no legal standing here. You're running an illegal rental business. Karen turned pale. One guest, now packing up their cooler of seltzers, whispered, We're getting a refund, right? The second officer, who had been inspecting the property, returned from my home office with a stack of papers. Found these in the desk drawer, he said. Printouts of rental agreements, credit card receipts, a business license application for Karen's Lake Retreats, LLC, listing my address as the business location. Karen lunged for the papers. Those are private business documents. Ma'am, the officer said firmly, you don't have a business here. This is criminal trespassing, possible breaking and entering, fraud, and unauthorized use of private property. One by one, the guests filed out, shooting daggers at Karen. A young couple stopped to apologize to me. We had no idea, the woman said. She had this whole story about being authorized to manage the property. She even had business cards. She handed me one. Karen's Lakeside Luxuries, where memories meet water, property management, and vacation rentals. The cops escorted everyone out. One officer stayed behind to take my statement. That's when I opened the guest book Karen had set out. Page after page of reviews. Best host ever. Karen's place is so cozy. Love the wine and cheese welcome basket. Karen went above and beyond. She even shared the owner's fishing equipment with my husband. 5 stars. We'll definitely book again in the fall. The kayaks were a great touch. Thanks for letting us use them. She even had a loyalty program. The officer whistled. How long were you away? 3 days, I replied. But based on this book, she's been doing this for at least 7 months. While we talked, I discovered a locked drawer in my desk. When the officer helped me force it open, we found a notebook with lists of my regular schedules, observations about when I typically left for work trips, and notes about my social media posts that indicated when I'd be away. She'd been studying me, planning this, waiting for opportunities. As Karen was being escorted to the police car for further questioning, my neighbor Tom rushed over from across the lake. Daniel, thank God you're back, he said out of breath. I've been trying to reach you. I saw strangers in your place 2 weeks ago, but Karen said you were letting her host her sister's wedding reception. Then last weekend, it was different people. Something fell off. Tom looked sheepish. I should have called sooner, but Karen is, well, you know how she gets when anyone questions her. I didn't know. The entire lake community knew. Karen was notorious for her clipboard, her friendly reminders about minor rule infractions, and her self-appointed role as community manager. No one had imagined she'd go this far. After the police left and the last guest reluctantly departed, still asking about that refund, I stood alone in my cabin. My sanctuary had been transformed into a caricature of lake house living. All anchors and blue stripes and signs that read "Lake Hair, don't care." The cleanup was overwhelming. I started in the kitchen, where the refrigerator contained labeled containers, complimentary breakfast items, and guest snacks, $5 each honor system. My cast iron skillet would need to be stripped and re-seasoned after whatever culinary disaster had befallen it. In the bathroom, little hotel-style bottles of shampoo lined the shower. My medicine cabinet had been emptied, my personal items stashed in a box marked owner's medication storage. I found my clothes neatly packed away, while the closet had been reorganized with empty hangers labeled guest use and a typed note about the extra blankets in the hall closet if lake nights get chilly. The deeper I went, the worse it got. My fishing gear had been curated into an authentic display in the sunroom. Photos of my family had been replaced with generic lake scenery. Someone had used my grandfather's antique tackle box as a rustic tissue holder. Around midnight, emotionally drained and still scrubbing mysterious stains from the coffee table, I found something that broke me. A water ring on my father's writing desk. The 100-year-old cherry wood, carefully maintained for decades, now permanently marked by someone's careless drink. I sat on the floor and cried. Not just about the desk, but about the violation. My private space, the retreat I'd saved for years to buy, had been invaded, commodified, and stripped of anything personal. As dawn broke over the lake, I finished putting away the last of the lake-themed decor into garbage bags. I'd reclaimed the physical space, but something was still missing. The sense of peace, the feeling of sanctuary. That would take longer to restore. The HOA got involved. At first, they tried to play neutral. We encourage community engagement, they said. I replied, great. Would you also encourage someone listing your home online while you're on vacation? Suddenly, things shifted. 3 days later, the HOA called an emergency meeting at the community boathouse. Nearly every homeowner around the lake attended, a record turnout. Karen was notably absent, having been advised by her attorney to avoid the gathering. The HOA president, a retired judge named Walter, cleared his throat uncomfortably. We're here to address recent events involving unauthorized rental activities. I presented my evidence, screenshots, booking records, bank statements showing Karen had collected over $28,000 in rental fees over 7 months. That's when the floodgates opened. Turns out, Karen had a pattern, borrowing amenities, letting her dog roam freely across private property, once even organizing a paddleboard yoga session in someone else's backyard pool. "She borrowed my boat," said Mike from the North Shore. "Told me she was just moving it to clean the dock. Then I saw it on Instagram with her lake tour clients. She's been running a garden-to-table dinner experience using my vegetable garden," added Eleanor, an older woman I barely knew, charging $95 per person for salads made with MY heirloom tomatoes. But this was her boldest move yet, and the HOA had no choice but to act. She was fined, her hosting privileges revoked, and thanks to my complaint, the local council updated short-term rental laws across the area. All cabin listings now require ownership verification. The legal consequences came next. The district attorney charged her with breaking and entering, fraud, and operating an unlicensed business. She avoided jail time by accepting a plea deal, restitution, community service, and probation. As for me, I upgraded my locks, installed cameras, and now use a smart home system that alerts me anytime anyone steps foot on the porch. I also invested in heavy curtains. Privacy has new meaning now. #, the community rebuilds. The strange thing about violation is how it ripples outward. Karen's actions didn't just affect me. They fractured our entire lake community. Neighbors became suspicious of each other. People installed security cameras and changed their spare key hiding spots. The easy trust of small-town lake living evaporated overnight. 2 months after the Karen incident, as it came to be known, Walter from the HOA knocked on my door. "We're having a community restoration day," he said, hands in his pockets. "Thought you might want to join." I was skeptical, but curious. The next Saturday, I walked down to the communal dock to find 30 neighbors with tools, paint, and picnic baskets. After what happened, we realized we've taken community trust for granted, Walter explained. "We're rebuilding, literally and figuratively." We spent the day repairing the shared dock, repainting the boathouse, and cleaning up the shoreline. Someone brought homemade lemonade. Eleanor from the North Shore taught kids how to identify native plants. It felt like what neighborhood should be, people sharing space respectfully, not exploitatively. Tom, my neighbor who had noticed the strangers, approached me as we were packing up. "I brought you something," he said, handing me a small package. Inside was a beautiful wooden sign, hand-carved, Thornhill Cabin, private residence. Not for rent, seriously, not even a little bit. We laughed, and for the first time in months, the lake felt like home again. Last week, while enjoying coffee on my porch, I installed a new wooden sign at the edge of the property. "Welcome to my cabin. Not yours, not Karen's, definitely not for rent." A guest from the incident sent me a message through the Airbnb app. "Sorry about all that. Beautiful place, though. 5 stars. I've started fishing again. The lake is peaceful in the early mornings. Sometimes I see Karen walking her dog on the far shore. She avoids eye contact. Her house, ironically, is now for sale. Turns out operating an illegal business has financial consequences. Yesterday, a woman stopped her car by my driveway, rolling down her window. "Excuse me," she called. "Is this place available to rent for Labor Day weekend?" I pointed silently to my sign. She squinted, read it, and laughed. "Worth a shot. Gorgeous spot." I smiled. "It is. That's why I keep it for myself." As she drove away, I sipped my coffee and looked out over the water. Some things aren't meant to be shared with strangers. Some spaces deserve to remain personal, protected, private. Well, at least someone appreciated the view.